Hi, this is Ren. I'm your editor and host of All Walks of Film. And before you listen to this podcast, I just want to say that I tried my best to salvage what we had of the conversation. Unfortunately, we had connection issues, so you're going to hear throughout the podcast a little bit of ins and outs. I'll try very hard for this not to happen again, but here it is. Thank you so much for listening. Hi, this is Ren.
This is Casey.
And we have a guest today.
Hi.
So, we just saw the Justice League film.
3 days ago.
And Chanel, you've seen it twice now.
Yeah, I saw it twice. Big mistake. Huge mistake.
Was it worse the second time?
Honestly, yes. Because you saw it coming and faster. You know, you see a movie like a couple times, it gets faster. It didn't even get any faster.
Wow.
Ugh, I don't want to think about it.
I will say, I laughed at it a lot the first time around, but I don't ever want to see it again because it won't be nearly as funny a second time, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. My friend laughed at the same points that you guys laughed at. Oh yeah, this is pretty fucking stupid, dude.
It's so ridiculous. Everything with the villain in this movie literally just seems like it was ripped out of a Transformers movie. You know, the big fiery pile of mashed potatoes is going after some mystical, magical box that does something, except for this time it's 3 boxes. And he summons his horde of nameless, faceless, MacGuffin army that all look like Tim Burton's version of Tinkerbell, and then releases a giant portal in the sky, and at the end of it all, it turns into the ending from A Troll in Central Park.
Yeah, so we are 5 movies now into this franchise, and as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been a good movie yet. There were aspects that I liked of Man of Steel, and I know everybody else in the world seems to love Wonder Woman, which blows my mind why, but this franchise is not good. They need to stop.
Well, I'm hoping that they'll stop before the Matt Reeves movie comes out, and then that can be like a starting point for a new DCU.
From what my understanding is the Matt Reeves movies are not connected to the DCEU movies.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
Okay, yeah.
That's exactly what we need to do, is not do these movies anymore.
I saw some reports saying that they were basically done with the DCEU because of standalone films. I know they want to do that Joker movie with Scorsese or something, and who knows if there might be a one-shot or a couple of Batman movies, but I'm sure there will be some, even if Affleck is out as Batman. Mm-hmm. Is he officially out, or is he just saying he wants to get out?
Well, due to the fact that the Weinstein effect is affecting a lot of different people in Hollywood.
Including Ben Affleck, because he tried to defend Weinstein, so now he's in hot water too.
Well, he tried to defend Weinstein, but there were also...
He has his own history of, really just disgusting behavior. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the video that's him clearly plastered or intoxicated or something with this woman who's interviewing him, and she's trying to interview him, and he keeps asking her to sit on his lap?
Yeah, I saw that. That was so fucking gross.
Yeah, that was really upsetting, and it just goes on and on and on. Oh man.
And at one point in the video, he starts mimicking Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah, that didn't help.
No, yeah, sorry.
What's that?
I saw Affleck too after seeing all that shit. Guy.
I mean, he's a decent actor, but he has been getting himself in hot water for a while from all the controversy with Argo, and then this whole thing, and now the Weinstein thing, and now the whole, is he gonna be Batfleck? Is he not gonna be Batfleck? Well, he's not gonna direct it anymore, but he still wants to star in it, but we don't know, you guys,
Yeah, and from what I understand with Matt Reeves films, he's eyeing for Jake Gyllenhaal to take over the cowl, which I think that's a really good choice. Part of me actually thinks Gyllenhaal would make a great Joker, more so than a Batman, but given the fact that he is an actor that can be really physical, I think he is a good choice for Batman as well. Especially seeing... Now, the movie wasn't great, but his physical performance in Southpaw definitely gives me hope for him as a Batman.
Right, where he's not doing the, like, scrawny, sleazy thing that he usually does.
Right.
What do you think?
I didn't even know he was gunning for Gyllenhaal to be in the movies.
I think they're trying to keep it in the family at this point. Because Maggie Gyllenhaal was in Batman Return, or The Dark Knight, sorry.
Yeah, and, well, Jake Gyllenhaal was in the movie with Heath Ledger as well, so...
Oh, yeah, because of the Brokeback Mountain, yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. There's that, too. It's like the 3-degree circle of Batman with the Gyllenhaals. Just round and round. I gotta say, it's funny to me that the two most interesting characters in the movie were given the least amount of screen time, and the 3 characters who literally could be interchanged with those realistic sex bots were like the big leading stars. Because I swear, if you've seen the robot woman who became a citizen of Saudi Arabia, she can emote better than Batman or Wonder Woman or Superman in this movie. She looked more realistic than Henry Cavill's CGI face. For sure. And then the only 2 people who actually act like normal human beings kind of get sidelined.
Yeah.
With the Flash and Cyborg.
Saw it the second time because I didn't think about it much the first time. On Cyborg, his thing kind of just happens and then he goes, and that's it. I like this guy a lot. Can we do something more with him, please?
His storyline was so interesting. This whole thing where it's like he didn't want to come back, but now he's back and he doesn't know what he's capable of. And every day, like, he finds out that he can do all these new things that he didn't know he could do. And there's this terror of, like, not knowing his own capabilities and having this intrusive consciousness in his own mind that he doesn't understand. But the movie just kind of, like, has a couple throwaway lines and then forgets about it, and also makes him invincible because everybody has the same skill set in this movie.
Well, yeah, and I thought it was such a missed opportunity to parallel him with Superman from Man of Steel, which I know you haven't seen, Chanel, but in Superman, I think it was in the trailers where he's talking to his mom and he's like, the world's too big, and then she's like, make it smaller, and then there's this whole idea of like just being constantly bombarded with sounds and people crying for help, like everywhere, all around the world, all at once. That was an interesting aspect, and you could have paralleled, since, this is still in the same universe of that, with Superman.
Yeah, and you could have had, like, Superman and Cyborg kind of have a connection with one another. That would have been cool, but they didn't do any of that.
Yeah, take the interesting aspects that you have put in the films and expand on them. Which is what they did with Logan, which we saw this year. Because let's face it, there have been some really bad Wolverine movies.
Oh, yeah.
But they managed to keep that stuff What's that?
No, this has been some fucking horrendous Wolverine movies, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, pretty much except for Logan, they're all really god-awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they managed to take the good aspects of them and, like, actually make a good film out of Logan.
But they still had fewer Logan movies to get to the one good... Like, they had fewer Wolverine movies to get to the one good movie than the DCU has had and still has had no good movies.
Well, yeah, and I think we're all in agreement that Wonder Woman, despite what the internet and practically all the people in the critics board say, yeah, we didn't think it was a good movie. It was just kind of bland, and it reminded me way too much of Captain America mixed in with a little bit of Thor.
But, like, really shitty.
Yeah. Though I will say the special effects with the Amazons in that movie fighting, when you actually did get to see them fight, which was just that first, 30-minute segment, was way better than any of the Amazon stuff in this movie. Other than the fact that, a couple of Amazons had abs and were,
and biceps, and were, actually lifting things and, actually doing things besides just posing.
Yeah. Otherwise, they were, replaced with, CGI models that were, so obvious CGI models. It was like watching a cutscene from a PS2 Final Fantasy game back in, the early 2000s.
I just don't understand why the effects are literally only getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I thought the effects in Thor, the first Thor movie, at the very beginning, were really bad. And this is, 6 years after?
The Nostalgia Critic legitimately has some videos. No, not the Nostalgia Critic. The Angry Video Game Nerd legitimately has a handful of videos that have better special effects than the Justice League movie.
And I will admit that when we saw it in the theaters, some of the special effects look worse on the theater screen than they did in the trailer. And I don't know if that is something to do with the projection that we're actually seeing in the theater. We have to see it, which I've seen with TV shows too. If you don't see it in the absolute best screen possible, the effects look really janky.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's it, because in a lot of the scenes that weren't in the trailers, the problem was things like the lighting in the clearly green screen CGI background don't match the lighting on the actual actors that you're seeing.
Well,
really amateur mistakes like that.
Well, part of the biggest problem is Zack Snyder wanted to make the film darker, and if you watch some of the earlier trailers for the film, the movie had a much darker color palette, and what they did was they brought up the saturation, and unfortunately...
Wait, are you trying to tell me that they fixed it in post?
Yes. So when they brought up the saturation, they set these things for a darker image for us to see. So you get to see all the flaws and stuff because it was designed for a different color palette. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it really hurts the film that way.
Especially when most of it is CGI and not actually there to begin with.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the costume designs and...
No, but that's what I'm saying, is that when you rely on fixing it in post by adjusting the color saturation, you're messing with what you actually got done with the footage you had that was intended for a different look and a different color palette.
Yeah, and I will say that for any film students or anybody who's looking to get into film, the phrase, "we'll fix it in post," is a phrase that if you hear, you should punch the person who ever says it.
No, that is not always true.
Yes, but that shouldn't be your go-to at the time.
That's true.
The concept of fixing it in post is stupid. Fixing it in post is something that you do where after the fact, you don't say it while you're shooting. You say it after the fact where it's oh, well, we made some mistakes here and stuff like that. Then you can say, we'll fix it in post. If you're shooting and somebody says, we'll fix it in post, right before they shoot, that's when you punch them.
Sorry,
I don't advocate punching people, but you get what I mean.
But as an example, there was one time I heard about a movie at our school where a kid showed up to the set in costume, and it was a blue shirt, and the next day he showed up to set without the blue shirt, and he had a red shirt on instead. And instead of doing anything to fix it, the director said, "Oh, we'll fix it in post." And literally tried to change his red t-shirt into a blue t-shirt in post-production.
If I were doing the post-production on that, I would demand money for that one.
Well, if I was on the set of that, that's why you don't let actors bring the costumes.
Well,
that's why you have the costumes put on set in advance.
Yeah, that's why you have wardrobe.
Yes.
Yeah. There's
literally a whole department for that. Sometimes it's only one person, but that's all it takes.
Yeah, so going back to the movie, oh, good God. So, at least for me, this film almost landed the so bad it's good category because I was laughing my ass off pretty much throughout the entire movie because the dialogue was so laughably horrendous that I'm sure I was annoying people in the theater because, at a certain point, I just had to, cover my mouth
and like hold it back just because like it's like I get other people are taking this movie seriously, but like I just can't. I can't. This is stupid. And you know, we watched Thor Ragnarok just a couple weeks ago, and Thor Ragnarok is kind of a stupid movie, but it's like really enjoyable, and like the scenes work and everything like that. You know, this movie literally seems like they you know, did everything last minute to try to make a franchise movie. This is like somebody snorted a whole bunch of coke and said, we're gonna make an Avengers movie next year.
Even though that's not what happened, that is what it feels like. The Deadpool Bob Ross commercial that we saw before the movie was literally the most sophisticated part of watching Justice League. It was more
dialogue. I was sitting there, and again for the second time because I hate myself apparently. That scene when they're explaining the box, where in the box to Bruce. The part where he's like, well, is it power? He's like, no. Some shit like that, where it's just like he says something. No, it's all of whatever. And that part, the second time, it fucking killed me. It's like, damn, I started crying.
Wasn't it like, it's not energy, it's all the energy, or something like that, yeah.
It's essentially the Tesseract from the first Avengers movie, except now we have 3 of them, but we're kind of combining the idea of the Tesseract with the Infinity Stones that are coming in the next Avengers movie.
Because they're trying to one-up Marvel in advance, even though they haven't even caught up to Marvel yet.
They haven't even made a good film!
I haven't seen a character so upset, or so obsessed with his mom's box since I saw Blue Velvet.
Well, there's Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah!
Mention the box thing. That fucking part when they got the box at he got the last box. He just like fast traveled the last box quietly.
You gotta call it the right thing. It's the mother box.
Mother box. When he transferred the mother box, like stealth took it from. How did they not hear this giant sound? No one was fighting. Superman had already decided to go with Lois Lane and whatever. Like, how did they not hear this thing?
Apparently, the DCEU exists in the same universe as The Walking Dead.
You're not paying attention to it. Some fucking superhero.
Everybody has like all of the abilities in the world. Like all of the superheroes all are invincible and have super speed and
super strength
strength and can all fly. But somehow they're all deaf. Nobody has super hearing.
No, Superman has super hearing.
But he doesn't use it.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Not in this movie.
No, not in this movie. They're too busy retconning, like, everybody to have the exact same skills, just at different degrees.
All right, and for all the nitpickers listening, I do want to mention this, because it was in the movie, the fact that Aquaman did glide with style, and while he was falling, he was doing things, so he wasn't technically flying, but
he was pretty much flying. Like, Wonder Woman doesn't technically fly either, but she flies.
All right, getting on to Wonder Woman. Okay, I wanted to make this point. Okay, so, like, Wonder Woman in the comics, and yes, I know this isn't canon, but, like, Wonder Woman is either comparable to Superman or stronger than Superman. And yet, she needs Aquaman to help her pull things.
With her lasso of truth. Yeah, that was some bullshit. I will say them, like, pulling this she now has super speed thing out of their ass was probably a good idea, because what we learned from the Wonder Woman movie is that you can't not show her in fast motion, or else you can see all the times that she's not doing anything in the movie.
Yeah, I think it was a very wise choice for Snyder to use fast motion in this movie. Because,
so that way then you don't notice that she can literally only do 5 moves, and half the time that she's on screen, she's actually her stunt double or a CGI replacement.
Well, she's a runway model turned actress, and
she hasn't turned actress. She's still just a runway model.
Well,
full stop.
I'm saying what the job description is. I'm not saying that she's actually good at it.
But she got paid $900,000 for 3 movies where they still haven't said her name. They haven't said her name for 3 movies, which is why I have a hard time calling her Wonder Woman. She hasn't even been called Wonder Woman a single time, ever. That's not even a thing yet. To be fair, The Flash and Cyborg haven't been called those things either yet, but they were only given like a quarter of a movie each. Kinda.
I mean, if you want to call CCTV footage a quarter of a movie, I wouldn't even call it that, yeah.
No, I'm talking about in this movie. In Justice League.
Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying. I was referring to Batman v Superman.
No. I'm talking about this one.
Yeah. So, I would definitely say that Barry Allen is the greatest strength of the movie.
But it's literally only because he's the best actor in the bunch. Ezra Miller from We Need to Talk About Kevin is just a powerhouse actor. And it's not that he was kind of given better material, because his storyline of how, like, his dad has been put in jail for murdering his mom, but he doesn't believe that his dad did it, and his dad is trying to get him to, like, move on with his life, but he's not going to do it, and he's trying to, like, become involved in the criminal like, he wants to get a degree in criminal justice, and then at the end of the movie he actually makes it, and even though his dad told him not to do it, he's still proud of his kid. Like, that's probably the most engaging and coherent storyline in the movie. Yeah, it was good, right?
It was excellent. And what kind of pisses me off about this Justice League, and they already kind of had these stories where they explain that more, because it's already been explained, so there's no point of it going further, kind of,
Yeah, that's been...
Well, they explained that first, and then put them in the movie, and they would have been...
Well,
right, and they've been doing that for a while, where they're doing things like, oh, by the way, Robin's already been murdered before you even met him. Or, like, literally as soon as you meet Jimmy Olsen, he gets shot in the head.
Yeah, the problem with a lot of these movies is they actually demand a lot of comic knowledge before you go into these movies. That's one thing that the Marvel Universe has been really good at. It's like, hey, if you haven't read the comics, you're good. If you have read the comics, we have a little, we have some Easter eggs for you. You're fine. But, like, in these movies, it's like you really have to pay attention, and you really have to, like, look online, all this kind of stuff, just to find out, like, basic stuff. Like, the whole thing.
But then you'll be more pissed off if you do it, because then it's like, oh, you did that entirely off screen, and now that entire storyline is over and completely wasted and will never show up again.
Well, like, this whole thing with Steppenwolf was only in the extended cut of Batman v Superman, like, preluding, right, all that kind of stuff. And, let's face it, I didn't watch the extended cut because, 2.5 hours is enough for me. But I watched it twice in 1 week because I really wanted to rip into it. And, I made a video, I made a couple videos about it. And yeah, it's one of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen. But, like, that being said, you didn't set up Steppenwolf very well. And I know this whole thing
leads... Are you talking about Steppenwolf or Doomsday?
I'm talking about Steppenwolf.
Okay, no,
yeah.
I just want to be sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they literally both look like giant piles of mashed potato to me. There's not really much of a difference between Doomsday and Steppenwolf between these two movies.
The only difference is Steppenwolf talks and Doomsday doesn't.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's no other difference between them.
There's a little bit of difference, just with, like, the...
Not in terms of engaging with them as characters.
Right, yeah, as characters, yeah. But, like,
I'm not talking about what's going on around them. I'm talking about the actual, like... Anyway.
Right, and this whole thing is supposed to, like, lead up to... Darkseid,
sorry.
And, yeah, like, quite... like, that being said, I'm not compelled with any of the villains, and, like, it's really disappointing because, like... if there's one thing that DC has always thrived over Marvel, it's in their villain department. Darkseid is a great villain. He's much better than Thanos.
But instead they decided to not only make them similar to one another, they also decided to make them look almost identical.
Well, no, we're talking about Steppenwolf for now. We haven't seen Darkseid yet.
I thought we saw Darkseid at the end. He was like teased, wasn't he?
No, we had Slade Wilson teased.
No, I'm not talking about Deathstroke.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I'm mistaken. Never mind.
Chanel, do you know what she's talking about?
Maybe there's a moment when he had, when he was saying for something, and I think he said for, did he say for Doomsday?
Yeah, he said for Darkseid. Like,
Right.
he specifically named Darkseid, and I thought you saw his face at that point, but I might have been mistaken.
You didn't see his face.
I don't-
It's kind of throwaway line, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it was such a brief moment that didn't impact anything that I could very well be mistaken and not really know the difference.
He had already gotten off screen when he said that, so he kind of like set it over like a background, and then they went over to the next scene.
Yeah, like, they really rushed through it, so I don't remember it that well.
Yeah, so I did find out that this movie was originally like 2.5 hours, but like on top of that, it was actually supposed to be split into 2 movies.
Dear
so,
God,
like,
no.
So we're talking about like 5+ hours of material that they've condensed down to this movie, because like it was originally, supposed to be like.
But
just
to do
part-
what? To say what? Like, there's no,
To-
like, through line or theme in this movie. It's just going through the motions of, well, we gotta get everybody together, but how are we gonna get everyone together? Oh, well, everyone just wanted to get together, so that was easy. So now we're all together, but now Superman's come back, and he's a little different now, but we kind of fixed that in about 5 minutes, and we have this big scary thing, and he went and he did his evil thing, but we stopped him just in time, and now there's gonna be a bigger, scarier thing in the next movie. Like, there's nothing more to it than that. It's just going through the very basics of what you expect from any given superhero movie, and then you stopped, and the movie was over.
And the problem is like, as an ensemble film, you like introduce the characters, but they never felt cohesively.
Like a team.
Yeah, they never felt like a team.
They never had chemistry with one another. Even, like, Cyborg and The Flash were great standalone, but none of the scenes of, like, even, like, The Flash and Superman having their race at the end, or any of the supposed, maybe, Selena Kyle-style romance thing that may or may not happen with Batman and Wonder Woman, in aggressive air quotes, didn't work. Like, there's just... I feel like there were a bunch of characters who also never talked to each other.
Yeah.
Like, Aquaman gives a speech to everybody, but it's not like you ever had a scene where, like, Aquaman talked to Cyborg.
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. They're a team, and they spend a lot of time together, but it kind of feels like they don't know one another at all.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because, like, even though, like, I hated this movie worse than Justice League, Suicide Squad at least had that bar scene where, like, people just, like, had that moment together.
Well, I feel like every character in Suicide Squad actually talked to one another at some point in the movie.
Yeah.
Except for Katana, obviously.
What I will say is I think this movie would have been a lot better if the film had a central character. And I think that central character could have been the Flash.
Yep.
And, like, had him sort of experience every character and everything's through his point of view, so that way, if you're not going into details with characters, it doesn't feel off. Like, you can learn about that in, like, another film or something like that, and that way
you can have, like,
the film
an
has
introduction to
focus
Batman. You could have an introduction to Wonder Woman.
We don't need another introduction to Batman. How many fucking
I don't
times
mean,
do we
like-
have to see those pearls?
No, I don't mean like that, but I mean, you could have, like, a 20-section scene that's Batman coming into the scene, looking awesome, like, oh, look, it's Batman.
Yeah, and, like, his introduction in this movie, like, didn't work narratively. It was just like, oh, here's a scene with Batman. Okay, we know Batman does that stuff, but like, what's the story of this movie? And then we switch to Wonder Woman, and it's like, oh yeah, Wonder Woman stopping a bank robbery from happening.
Because
Great,
you remember that
like,
from The Dark Knight? Remember that? But we took all the cool parts that you liked in that and had crappy CGI instead.
Yeah,
but that's cool, right?
And this could have been the moment where, you know, instead of doing all that kind of stuff, you could have been bringing the characters together and you could have been moving the plot forward. But, like, the movie isn't interested in doing that. The movie isn't interested in having a plot. They're just like, hey, you know, let's just have a whole bunch of characters do some cool shit. And, you know, everybody will be like, oh, wow, you know, like superheroes. And it's like, yeah, you know, other people want to watch movies.
You know what's the other weird thing about Wonder Woman, too?
That sounded really weird.
You know what's the other really weird thing about Wonder Woman at this point?
What?
Not only has she never been called Wonder Woman in 3 movies, she's never been... Like, she's never fought for America until this movie. And she's like an American
Wonder Woman
icon.
living in France?
That's what I keep saying. Why is she in fucking France?
I guess so she doesn't get
She's
compared.
not living in France anymore. Like, they're not consistent. No.
she is.
She was living in France at the end of the Wonder Woman movie, but at the beginning of this movie, she was at the Parliament in Britain.
Oh, right. She was in England.
She was in England, so apparently she's like a European icon instead of an American icon. What the fuck is going on?
One of my favorite lines in the movie, and this is not my favorite line because I think it's well written or anything like that, but there's this scene where they're working at the Historical Society, and then somebody says to Gal Gadot, what do you do? Like, what do you do? And she's like smiling because, you know, she's Wonder Woman and all that kind of stuff, but like part of me was just going like, yeah, what do you do?
Maybe the second time. What are you fucking doing here? What's going on? Shit.
Well, what I really loved about that scene was this guy's like, you always say the same thing. And she's like, what can I say? I'm boring. And it's like, yes, you are boring. Go away.
And also this movie, like, say again?
For like a trailer moment.
Yeah. Where it's supposed to be like ironic because Wonder Woman keeps having this problem because she had this problem in the Wonder Woman movie where like she had that moment that was pretty much for the trailer where she said like, oh, being a secretary where I'm from, that's called slavery. And it's supposed to be funny because clearly slavery is wrong. But then she treats Etta Candy like a servant the whole rest of the movie. Like she actually took that line seriously. And then they do it again in this movie where it's like, wow, you're so boring. And she's like, yeah, I'm boring. And it's like, no, that's not the point. Don't be boring. Do something. I will say, the one thing I'm not going to complain about with Gal Gadot in this movie is I'm not going to complain that much about the fact that you could see up her skirt 7 times in the movie, and that they finally made her skirt shorter than her actual biker shorts. To the point where, like, she literally might as well have not even been wearing a skirt. I don't understand the point. I'm not even going to complain about that much, because in this movie, before you got to any of that, including, like, the Transformers, like, Gal Gadot's butt in the center of the screen, you had, like, Aquaman literally do that Carl's Jr. commercial segment where he's, like, shirtless out at the ocean with the wind in his hair, and he's chugging the whiskey, and he throws it on the ground, and he's just, like, all pecs and biceps, and then, you know, like, yes, we can talk about the fact that Gal Gadot has no skirt anymore, and all the Amazons are suddenly wearing midriffs, and how upsetting is that? But every dude in this movie was, like, really pitching a tent and stuffing their underwear with socks. Like, there was too much bulge in this movie. There were literally too many dicks on the dance floor for this movie.
Dude, it's Zack Snyder. Haven't you seen 300?
There were more. I felt like it was more, like, aggressive than 300.
More aggressive than 300, which, like, my gay friends were just like, this is, like, I mean, this isn't porn, but this is, like, close.
But that was, like, at least kind of, like, well, that's kind of what they looked like. That's kind of what the Spartans were like. You know, it's fine.
Not really.
Not really, but, like,
they didn't really dress like that.
No, but, like, you can kind of deal with it. In this movie, it's just like, you know, everybody makes fun of the bat nipples. you know, like in Batman and Robin have like the bat nipples. But
and
in this movie,
Batgirl doesn't.
And Batgirl doesn't. But in this movie, you have like the Bat Schlong, the Flash Schlong, the Aquaman Schlong. Why? It's just like carved into their uniform. And like there's literally a point where Batman is on the ground and his bulge is like 4 or 5 inches taller than the rest of his body, and it's really weird.
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Wonder Woman's outfit, like.
But that's what I'm saying. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's
like,
all I'm trying to say. It's like the same problem.
Her breastplate, and like, you know, I'm not gonna like harp on the, like her bust size or anything like that, but I will say, like, costume wise, her breastplate sticks out from where her boobs are, and it looks awkward.
I mean, yeah, she's clearly like too small for her outfit. That's already like too small already. It's very odd because it seems like clearly her outfit was tailor-made for her in the last movie, but it feels like for somehow she ended up with like the wrong size costume in this movie.
Yeah. Also her I don't know what you would call that, the kilt or like the bottom part.
You're talking about the skirt?
Yeah, the skirt.
Yeah, it's like a kilt. I mean, it's not, but
yeah, it was significantly shorter than
no, that's what I'm saying. It's like too short, but also like too big.
Yeah.
It just seemed like really not made to her proportions at all. And it could be because like in between movies, she became pregnant and she had a kid. So it could be like they sized her and they made the outfit and then she lost baby weight. Like it could be, but then you fix it. I mean, honestly, a lot of the outfits looked really bad, except for, I think the Flash was the only one who had, like, a really good-looking outfit.
Yeah, the weird thing about Batman's outfit is, like, it's mostly, like, that, like, rubber design, and it's, like, we've had several Batman movies that have started to add armor to his suit because, let's face it, his power is, in this movie, he's rich. So why would his outfit be something that could be easily messed with?
Well, it's also, like, the worst-looking Batman outfit. Like, when they were releasing the stills of the Justice League lined up on the spaceship sort of thing, I was like, dude, you can literally go to Hot Toys and find more realistic-looking action figures than the actual actors in the movie. Yeah, and it's a lot of it's the costume. Like, Cyborg was a really cool design, but it's kind of like watching the Green Lantern, where the CGI is so bad, you're just looking at it and you're like, there's nothing there. You're a golf ball. Like, you're literally like one of those little green golf balls, but life-size and moving around.
Yeah, you just have a whole bunch of green on you.
Yeah.
The CGI was for Cyborg. Other CGI was. It didn't look at least he didn't look horrible.
I mean, he didn't look horrible, but it also didn't look like he was really there. You know what I mean? I mean, especially because, like, a lot of his power was morphing around. Like, the only time that I really kind of thought he was there was, I thought that the scene where Steppenwolf ripped his leg off was really cool, because I was like, oh, there's actually stakes now, and that was, like, really gnarly, and I didn't want that to happen to Cyborg, and, you know, I'm sure they're gonna repair him later, but for now, he's gotta run around with only one leg? Like, what's he gonna do to overcome it? And then, like, 2 minutes later, oh, it just morphed right back into his body like nothing ever happened. Cool.
So getting on to that idea about stakes, one thing that I gotta bring up, which I thought was absolutely hilarious, was the stakes were essentially a family of 3. You know, there was the little girl, the little boy, family of 4, and the 2 parents. Mm-hmm. You know, in this house, and you had the little bee people, or like whatever the hell they were, wasp people.
I love how the movie tried to act like somehow they all grew like mosquito mech suits. Like, was I the only one? I kept thinking about South Park this whole movie, where, like, when you see the swarms, I was just like, mosquito, Zika, virus. And then the part where they're talking about chaos, out in my head, it was literally just Butters going like, because it sounds about that cheesy when they talk about chaos. But, like, in South Park, it's literally a little kid. In this movie, it's supposed to be like an adult you take seriously.
Yeah, so, you know, with this little family that's like the surrogate for the entire world, I guess, you know, like, it's just really funny because, like, you know, the complaint with all these movies is, you know, the characters don't even care about humanity, so, like, they're just...
Finally, 5 movies in, we have a movie where any of them actually give a fuck.
Yeah, and, you know, it's 4 people in a house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing that, like, was already ruined with this movie, that it's ruined the whole franchise, is after Batman v Superman, they, like, immediately killed off Superman in a super undignified way. 5 minutes later, they indicate that he's gonna come back. A week later, they released an official trailer for the Justice League that included Superman, so you knew for a fact that he was gonna come back. And they had, like, photos and stuff. You knew he was coming back in Justice League. But then for 3 movies in the meantime, they have to keep telling you that Superman's dead, because they know you will have forgotten that Superman died, because they already told you that he wasn't going to stay dead. So by the time it comes around to, like, oh, what are we going to do? Superman's gone. It's so sad. We've been talking about it for 3 movies. Well, we'll bring him back. And then they brought him back, and it's like, oh no, and now he's different. And 5 minutes later, he's just like, I'm fine. It's cool. And it was just like, so what was the point of your stupid little detour here?
Also, like, what happened to the whole, like, black Superman suit thing? Because, like, that was supposed to be, like, a whole thing, and then they just got rid of it.
It probably was going to be too much like Venom from Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, so for those of you unfamiliar with the Death and Life of Superman comics, which, at least in my opinion, was like a really great run, which talked about, you know, Superman defending humanity and not being able to beat Doomsday. Well, he beat Doomsday, but he died in the process. And then, you know, humanity and the Justice League mourned for him. And then, you know, there was, like, this uprising of different people claiming to be Superman and then a clone of Superman. And, like, you know, that's kind of, like, where Cyborg comes in and, like, a lot of different characters, you know, all trying to take on the mantle of Superman, you know, after he's gone. You know, quite frankly, that deserves its own movie. But unfortunately, since Batman v Superman fucked that up, like, I don't think we're going to...
And they already brought him back.
Yeah,
so...
We're not going to get that great storyline, which is unfortunate.
I swear being a fan of DC Comics literally makes the DCU actively worse.
So DC has all these beautiful, like, emotionally gripping stories. There's so much that they have that they ruin all the fucking story because they keep getting the same dude.
Yeah.
Like with the death of Superman. That's like a really fucking beautiful, excellent story. They, at the time that it came out, crush people, and to have like this Superman that dies, but you know he's fucking coming back anyway. A year later, 2 or 3 movies, 3 or 4 movies later, or whatever, it takes this thing that could have been really cool, really emotional, and just fucking kills it. So now you're just like, oh, he's back. And then it's all right. He's alive again. No real change. Nothing. You know, there's no real battle between him and the guys and. You're just like, fuck, why do you do this to such great superheroes?
Yeah, and they kept alluding to that, too, with all the times that they had to bring up that Superman was dead, in case you forgot that you were supposed to remember that Superman died, because you already knew he was coming back. Every time they were like, the world has changed because there is no Superman. But not really. There were no ramifications to Superman being dead, or Superman coming back, which is what the life and death of... or the death and life of Superman, right? Okay, the death and life of Superman was all about, was the ramifications of Superman dying.
Yeah, there were I mean, it was incredible, the stakes that happened, because the world did change, you know. I love the funeral for Superman. Like, that was, like, one of the most beautiful things that I saw in the comic.
That they wrecked 3 separate times in 2 movies.
Yeah, well... You know, because they fucked up the timeline, you don't have the Justice League mourning for him. That you know, that's a big thing. You know, so you mess up that storyline. And then you can't even tell a cohesive storyline with Steppenwolf, which, you know, let's face it, most people, even DC fans, aren't really familiar with him.
Yeah, I mean, like, people, like, who could passively say, oh, I like Batman. I watch Batman the animated series and the Mask of the Phantasm and the Nolan movies. If you're that kind of a fan, you couldn't really say anything about Steppenwolf, I would think. You know, he's not that well known. He's not like the Joker or Two-Face or Scarecrow. I'm trying to think of someone not named in the Nolan movies, or Harley or Poison Ivy, or like the Mad Hatter, something like that.
Do you ever know what storyline they were gonna do with Batman if they were to make if they were to do like a standalone film with Batman?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they tried to make Ben Affleck's Batman Old Man Batman from year one, but, like, completely failed to do anything that made Old Man Batman interesting by having him be in, like, perfect physical shape and, like, perfectly handsome and not really handicapped or having any difficulties of growing old. So, but since they've sort of staked their claim on this Old Man Batman, I don't think it would be Old Man Batman. So, what Batman would it be instead? I don't know.
About any sort of... I didn't hear any rumors about anything. Just, you know, odd with superhero movies. There's always like a rumor or something fucking... I didn't hear nothing about what could happen.
Yeah, like, is there any rumors about, like, what canon Matt Reeves' Batman is gonna be?
From what I've heard, there are hints that it's going to be alluding to the Arkham Asylum comics.
Oh, okay.
And, like, the Long Halloween and stuff like that.
That's what I was gonna guess, was, like, Frank Miller's Long Halloween, and...
I don't think that's Frank Miller.
It's not? No, I don't think it is.
It's Jeff Loeb or something?
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't think it is Frank Miller. But yeah, I was thinking the Long Halloween, and what's the one that comes right after that?
I'm not sure, but, like, from what I heard, there is some inspiration with the Arkham Asylum video games, but, like, also drawing from the actual Arkham Asylum comics. And there's this idea that they're going to make, like, a raid style movie where...
Oh, that would be awesome!
Where Batman has to fight through, you know, the Rogues Gallery, like, trapped in Arkham Asylum.
That sounds amazing.
That is a movie that I don't think anybody can argue would make a bad movie. Like, so long as the action's good...
Which can't really happen with the DCEU right now because all the action's been awful.
I mean, I would say get Gareth Edwards or the person who did Dredd, you know, as an assistant. You know, maybe get them both together to work on it.
I think that the woman who did the fight choreography for Sin City, the Sin City movie, is still working. You could get her on board.
Yeah, you could. I mean, that's more like Zack Snyder style action.
She does other style martial arts too.
Gotcha.
That's the thing that most people know her work from.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, you know, as much as I like Sin City, you know, if you're going to talk about, like, fighting styles and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, it's very similar in vein to, you know, the stuff that we see.
No, I see what you mean, but I've actually worked with her personally. She does more fast-paced kind of fighting as well.
Okay, gotcha.
So, in the movie, the color palette was a wreck. The costumes were awful. The script was at least so terrible that it was kind of hilarious. The characters were really badly defined and kind of only saved by really good actors because the direction wasn't going to help anything. The choreography was a wreck. The storyline was stupidly simple and bland. And it's still one of the better DCU movies, which is pathetic.
Yeah.
I honestly think Batman vs. Superman was slightly better. Probably
you do?
Yeah.
Okay. Because,
I mean, I didn't love that movie. I mean, I think about how shitty it got. It gets shittier to me. I don't know. I just think I like the fight scenes more in Batman versus Superman. And it's probably just because I'm a nerd for both of those guys. To see them punching each other and screen was cool.
I will agree with you to a certain aspect. At least in Batman v Superman, there was a little bit of weight to the fighting. Like, there was a sense of gravity. There was a sense of, you know, oh, these are physical objects that, you know, they're hitting and punching. Like in this movie,
I agree with that.
especially one of the most egregious scenes in the entire movie is like when they're essentially doing the Tremors thing, where like, you know, whatever's coming out of the ground. Like, dude, I haven't read all the comic books and all that kind of stuff, but whatever the power is that they're like doing on the ground and like, you know, the people are running away from, look god awful. It's one of the worst special effects sequences I've seen in, I'm gonna say, almost 10 years.
That actually is a good point. Like, my problem with Batman v Superman is that you can't see anything, but because you can't see anything, it still looks better than the Justice League, where you can see exactly how shitty everything looks.
It would have helped the film if they had made the film darker, because that's what the color palette was. You can't fix it in post.
Just that.
Just to...
It's not just that, but also like the oversimplified storytelling actually does make it more boring. Like, as much as they tried to cram way too much into Batman v Superman, at least like there's a variety to the kind of action and what's happening, whereas in this one it's like, oh, the villain shows up at the location where the cube is and gets the cube and leaves in a magic portal. Wasn't that riveting? Just wait another 10 minutes and you'll get to see the exact same thing again. Wasn't that exciting?
Also, like, the whole stakes of the movie is like preventing this guy Steppenwolf from getting all 3 cubes, and you know it's going to happen in the movie, so like there isn't a lot of stakes there, except it's like, oh, well, you know, once this portal comes, then, you know, oh, he'll become, like, really powerful, and they'll have to fight him, and they'll have to work together and, like, combine and use their powers. But instead of doing that, they separate the cubes, and then his own guys go after him, and then he, like, beams up and then goes to Darkseid. Like,
leaving a grassy knoll in his wake for some reason.
Oh my god, the grassy knoll. Which you said was similar to the end of A Troll in Central Park.
You could literally put them side by side. It's the same thing. And honestly, the Don Bluth 2D animated movie looked a little bit more realistic, at least.
Okay, I this movie is nowhere near this level, but could you make the argument that it's somewhat similar to the end of Princess Mononoke, where, like, you know, the green, like, goes over and stuff like that?
I mean, Princess Mononoke is far more sophisticated.
Well,
but
Princess Mononoke is far more sophisticated than most animated movies that come out, even the good ones. So, you know, that's a really bad comparison, but, like, I was just... Yeah.
Except for in this case, it wasn't Manhattan, it was Chernobyl. But other than that, it was, like, the same thing. Well, it's funny because in the movie, they didn't say it was Chernobyl, but they said that it was, a radiation plant in Russia that had been, like, it had been radiated, and now people are just now trying to move back in, and they're having problems with it. It's like, so you're talking about Chernobyl, right? But they never said it, but that's totally what they were talking about. Which, I mean, when you're not even trying to hide the fact that Gotham is Chicago, why are you even trying to pretend like you exist in a different world? Just have Batman and the Justice League hang out in Chicago and just mention Chernobyl. You're not fooling anybody.
I gotta say that also disappointed me with the trailers that we saw before the movie, because we saw the trailers for Rampage, which was shot in Chicago, and like all that stuff looked more interesting and compelling in Chicago than, you know, like what was happening in Justice League.
Right, but like we were all talking about this during the movie, how the Chris Nolan trilogy was also shot in Chicago.
Not all of it, because they did shoot The
not
Dark
all
Knight
of it, but a lot
Rises,
of it.
Yeah.
Well, The Dark Knight was definitely all shot in Chicago. And if you live in Chicago, it's kind of cool because you're like, oh, hey, I know that place. But at the same time, even if you live in Chicago, you're still transported into like this other feeling of Gotham. But in the DCEU, they're just like, by the way, Gotham is the Chicago city skyline.
Yeah, because in The Dark Knight, you can't, like, watch the movie and just go, like, oh, yeah, I know the logistics of everything that's happening in this movie, because
but they have Chicago landmarks in the Batman v Superman and in the Justice League. Like, they have the Vagina Building, like, all over the place. In this movie,
you gotta explain what the Vagina Building is.
You'll know it if you've seen the DCEU. It's the big triangle building with the one little light right at the top.
Okay.
Like, right in the middle towards the top. And I swear, that's just like a public service announcement to anybody with a girlfriend. Like, here's a roadmap. We showed you where it is.
And it's blinking.
Do some good tonight. Like, go do something. But, in this movie, you saw even more, because you saw, like, Grant Park, and you saw the stadium. Or, it's like, it's not the stadium, but it's like an outdoor arena that's, like, right next to the Bean. But it's a...
Were they shot that at Soldier Field, or did that just, like, kind of look like Soldier Field?
It was Soldier Field, and that's where they put, like, that big science lab was inside of a Chicago landmark.
That was weird.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Nolan movies, you just never, you knew it was Chicago if you're from here, or if you just kind of know Chicago. Just feeling that, oh, this is Chicago, you know?
Right.
And that was, you know, it's like Zack Snyder doesn't know shit about nuance at all. Everything has to be in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, see little things on your own. He has to constantly just like, here you go, here's Chicago, here it is, right in your face.
Well,
that's
it's not
true.
like the Marvel movies where literally everything happens in New York, and it's like, hey, there's a whole United States that you don't show except in the X-Men movies and like the X-Men comics and stuff like that. But other than that, everything takes place in New York. It's like, you know, at least DC has like created its own like fictional places, so it's like, you know, this is sort of Manhattan, this is sort of, you know, Chicago, and this is, you know, but it's not exactly.
Well, it's also super weird in the DCEU because, like, what Gotham and Metropolis stand for has sort of changed. Like, originally, Gotham and Metropolis were both New York. Metropolis is New York during the day, and Gotham is New York during the night.
You're talking about, that's what Frank Miller said.
That's what Frank Miller said, yeah. But
he's
also,
not the creator of Batman.
No, but he did say that. He did say that. Like, that was the idea. But also, like, it makes sense because New York was called Gotham, like, from the 1800s. That's just the name for New York City. You know, like, that's pretty obvious. But then it sort of turned into a thing of, like, well, Gotham is now more of, like, a hybrid of, you know, once New York got really cleaned up and, like, Disney-fied, they sort of tried to bring in more Chicago influence into Gotham, and then they also tried to sort of separate Gotham from Metropolis by making Metropolis more like DC and making it more of a political center, which makes sense, you know, for journalism and media, totally works. But in this movie, well, in this franchise, they're both, like, directly across the Hudson River from one another, which doesn't make any sense. But then there's also Midway City, which in real life, like, you watch Midway City from Suicide Squad, and it's like, well, that's New York, but Gotham is New York, and Metropolis is Hoboken. What? Where are these? Why is it like the Tri-City area? Like, the world in the DCU just is so tiny. Like, it's like this tiny little pinpoint on a globe, and like there's the whole rest of the world you can deal with, but you don't.
Yeah, and the way that it's set up, we talked about this in our Batman v Superman retrospective, but like this whole idea of, you know, these two cities, it's like what? So like it's New York and New Jersey? Because that seems like if you're trying to make like fictional cities and like have the river and all that kind of stuff, like that seems to make the most logistical sense of like where they would be. And yeah, there's this whole idea of like, well, Metropolis doesn't seem to be that bad, but like Gotham is like really shitty, and like why isn't Superman like just like diving in and helping out all the time?
I will say, after living there, I know that when you see Batman v Superman, geographically, Gotham is New York City, and Metropolis is in New Jersey, but really, Jersey City is a lot closer to Gotham nowadays than New York is.
Yeah. And, you know, part of that is the fact that, you know, comics change with the times.
Right, of course. But
you know.
once you put it in like a realistic space, and it's not like we haven't had movies based on comic books that have done like a real world atmosphere well, like balanced the difference between seeing something realistic and seeing something based on comics. Like the original Tim Burton Batman was, I still think to this day, the best blend of like true to the comics and also looking realistic. And then, you know, with the Chris Nolan ones, you had the ones where it was taking the ideas and the themes and the atmosphere from the comic and placing it in a realistic setting, which I think both of those have their own merits. But in this one, it's just sort of like thoughtlessly hodgepodged in there, and they don't have a clear direction on how to make these cities that are their own characters actually function in a movie. I mean, they function just about as well as their human characters, so, you know, not at all.
I think it really kind of boils down to, like, having the ability to be subtle about any sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Like, there's such a Thor's hammer over your head. You get it?
It's the worst thing about this. It's obviously because of Nolan. You can't really compare Nolan to Zack Snyder because, you know, it's two different worlds. But Nolan has such an ability to kind of tell you stories that are really beautiful. It can be complicated, but kind of explain them in a way that he tells, and you can pick up on it on your own, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think it's really cool about all of his Batman movies. Things that, but he has enough, like, there's enough hints and there's, you know, enough sort of subtlety in it where you go, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Even if it's not, I get it. You still, you know, you still kind of understand where points are going, what is happening, or what is where, you know. And Zack just can't do that because you suck at so-called directing thing you're doing. You suck at it. Or we need to get out of here. Just move along.
Yeah, but instead they just keep handing him those sweet, sweet paychecks.
And it's not paying off. Like, you mean one thing, shitty movies, and it's paying off, but it's not even paying off financially.
No, well, definitely not. I mean, Wonder Woman did for some reason.
From what I just read today was that the Justice League is actually going to be shifting so that Wonder Woman is going to be more central. Because, you know, that was the only film that was truly successful. So,
like,
you know,
Suicide Squad was financially successful, but pretty much only overseas. Wonder Woman's the only DCU movie that's been financially successful in America.
Financially successful, and whether we agree or disagree with it, critically successful. So, you know, so they're
doubling down. So
they're doubling down, including the fact that it is very possible that Wonder Woman could be up for award season. Also, the fact that since a lot of guys in Hollywood don't know how to behave, it gives Wonder Woman an edge because of that reason.
Even though clearly the better Wonder Woman movie that came out this year was actually directed by a woman, and also written by a woman, and also produced by a bunch of women.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people didn't watch it because A, it's an R-rated movie, B, it's, you know, a taboo topic. Even to this day, you know, polyandry, which is...
Polyamory.
Okay, yeah.
In this case, it was polygamy, though. Like, they weren't legally all married to each other, but they were all one family unit. They were all significantly committed to one another and raising each other's children.
Right.
In this case, it is polygamy, I would say.
But yeah, you know, it's something that's still controversial to this day, and, you know, I think that's part of the reason.
Dude, whatever. It was a better Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, it was.
And it actually had more female involvement than, you know, Wonder Model. Just, ugh.
Yeah, so I really want to get into Wonder Woman in this movie for a little bit. And, okay, so, you know, you have that opening sequence where she fights off the bank robbers, and she only does, like, 5 poses, which you all pretty much know at this point.
Right. It's the superhero landing, the sliding on the floor, the putting her wrist in front of her chest, either with her gauntlets or with her shield, putting her wrists together, or pulling on her lasso.
Yeah, but
Those are like her 5 go-to moves at any given time.
Yeah, also...
And I'm like, dude, you can literally play Injustice and see Wonder Woman pull out more action moves than that. Come on!
Yeah, also, I have to be very specific about this. There's a certain thing that Gal Gadot does where, she'll be, like, pushed back, and then her head's down, and then she does that look up, and it's, like, iconic. That's just, like, something that she does in all the films.
But I don't think it's... most of her time on screen is doing that one thing.
Yeah, I mean, also smiling. Even when, like, it doesn't, like, really work for the narrative. Like, there's, like, one scene in the movie where, like, all this fighting is going on. And, they're, like, fighting off the, like, monsters, and they're fighting Steppenwolf and all this kind of stuff. And then it cuts to Wonder Woman, and she just has a smirk on her face. And it's like, well, great. Okay, so she likes to fight. Oh, okay, I get it. You're trying to be lighthearted, but, like...
Well, you know who she actually reminds me of a lot?
Who?
She reminds me a lot of Kyle MacLachlan on How I Met Your Mother, where he plays the captain, and there's an ongoing gag about how the top half of his face and the bottom half of his face don't match, because the top half of his face, he's scowling, and he looks angry, but the bottom half of his face, he's smiling, and he looks happy. And that's like her go-to one face she can make in the movies, is like this weird Kyle MacLachlan look. You can probably look up, like, a clip on YouTube and know exactly what I'm talking about, of just, like, How I Met Your Mother, the captain, and find, like, their little clip of it, and it's seriously exactly like Gal Gadot.
Yeah, I will say, like, performance-wise, the two actors that delivered the most were Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller.
And at least Jason Momoa mostly delivered in the, sexy modeling department.
Oh my god, all the just gasping for breath and the swooning that I heard in the theater, just anything he did.
Partially from me. I didn't swoon a whole lot, but there was one point where he was, like, torpedoing through the water, shirtless, with like wet pants on. And it was just, like, all pecs and booty, and for a minute I just had to be like, whoa! And then I had to compose myself.
I had a quick moment with that with Amber Heard, when they were in the water together, and I was like, oh yeah, there's something. I'm sorry, people. I know that everybody else just drools when they see Gal Gadot. She just doesn't do it for me.
She's like, she's pretty, but, like, I mean, I'm not, like, Fox of this new era of movies.
No,
she really is, though.
No. I'm gonna disagree with you. That's an insult to Megan Fox, because, like, at least Megan Fox can actually emote in some scenes. Like,
I don't agree with that at all. But as long as we're both talking about, they are also the same in that they're kind of a disgrace to Wonder Woman.
Oh, the whole thing where she's like, oh, the invisible plane's stupid, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and she was actually one of the main reasons why there wasn't a Wonder Woman movie, like, earlier.
Oh, she was the reason, because they were trying to make a female-directed Wonder Woman movie right before the animated Wonder Woman movie came out in 2009. They were really trying to make it happen and come off the ground, and there was a lot of rumors about who was going to play Wonder Woman. Like, Lauren Graham was really trying to play Wonder Woman, and Kate Beckinsale... No, not Kate Beckinsale. No,
the person on How I Met Your Mother.
No, it was,
That's who Joss Whedon was.
No, this is older than that. It was, I cannot remember her name.
I know Lucy Lawless.
No, well, yeah, Lucy Lawless, of course, because, like, yeah. I think Zoe Bell also tried to... Zoe Bell is Lucy Lawless's stunt double in Xena.
Okay. So
they both played Xena. But it was the woman from Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, Katie Sackhoff.
Katie Sackhoff. Yeah, Katie Sackhoff really wanted to play Wonder Woman. So when all that was going on, there was a rumor that Megan Fox might play Wonder Woman, and she made this really big public announcement where she was like, even if they asked me to, I would never do that. Wonder Woman is so lame. I mean, the invisible jet, come on. And as soon as that happened and went public, everyone was like, yeah, fuck Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's stupid, you guys. And then the whole project was just dead in the water. And then they made the animated movie. Yeah, definitely fuck her. But I feel like that's not quite as egregious as, advocating the genocide of Palestinians, like our current Wonder Woman, you know, like, just casually throw that in there.
I was thinking about that so much when you guys told me that she was in the Israeli army. I thought, oh boy, that's...
To be fair, I tried not to judge her too much on that originally because every Israeli citizen has to be a part of the Israeli army. And, you know, in America, there was a huge, Vietnam War draft, but that doesn't mean every soldier in Vietnam agreed with the war or wanted to be there, you know? Yeah, so that in and of itself doesn't mean...
Let's face it, military people are indoctrinated as fuck in general.
Definitely. But she did make, like, a very public Twitter post in support of the Israeli military murdering Palestinian women and children.
That's gross. Oh my god.
Yeah, and by the way, she gets to play our shining icon of racial and religious tolerance towards all mankind.
All right, so to
progressiveness.
Clarify, did she actually advocate for the genocide, or did she just do the common phrase, I stand with Israel?
She did not say I stand with Israel, but she was specifically talking about, she didn't say like murder or genocide, but she was essentially saying in her post like, the Israeli army will eventually, be successful in... I can't remember the exact phrase she used because she tried to make it sound nice, but she was basically saying like, in defeating the Palestinian citizens, all the men, women, and children. It was something like that. Like, it was really messed up.
Can you find that tweet? I'm sure she probably did.
Yeah, Ren is looking it up right now.
I'm looking it up right now.
But, you know, we got to promote Wonder Woman as a symbol of progressivism.
God, that's such like such like shitty modern feminism where it's just like, yeah, women besides those women. You respect people besides those fucking people. Wow,
yeah, that's so
fucking shitty.
That's so true. Like in America, there is this really shitty like white feminism where it's like, oh, equality for the rich white women. But in America in general, we have this really bad problem of like, well, we really care about like the sanctity of life, just not the life of people in other countries. We don't really care about that.
Yeah. So here's the tweet that she said, because
because really a direct quote is necessary when talking about stuff like this.
Yeah. So the direct tweet is, "I'm sending my love and prayers to my fellow Israeli citizens, especially to all the boys and girls who are risking their lives protecting my country against the horrific acts conducted by Hamas, who are hiding like cowards behind women and children. We shall overcome. Shabbat shalom."
That's what she said, yeah.
I mean, it's just a bad rumor that wasn't even necessarily, true.
I don't think it was true. I mean, it is a whole thing of, like, she's definitely buying into this, ridiculous propaganda of Israeli has, to take a...
right over all this land of people who've lived there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can read all these stories and see all this, like, really heartbreaking footage of the damage that Israel is doing to Palestine with, like, all these sieges and demolishing their cities and completely destroying their infrastructure, and people are dying amongst rubble and ash just all the time. And it's mostly civilians who are being hurt by this. It's not terrorists or anything, like...
They've totally blockade people from getting like food and shit, like.
Yeah, they have. They did that for like a year, I think.
Yeah, and like in these circumstances, especially when you have a character like Wonder Woman, who is like the most egalitarian hero in comic books, period. Like, she. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that she advocates for women's rights more than anything, but, like, she advocates...
I don't think that's true, though.
No, she doesn't, because, like, one of the famous lines that she said in one of the comics is, you know what that means? Liberty and justice for all, regardless of race, color, or religion.
Exactly.
And even though gender isn't in this quote, all the stuff that she does with Steve Trevor and all that kind of stuff is also what she advocates for. She doesn't like divides between people. Yes, she did have a bias because she came from a homogenous, isolated culture, but, as she experienced the world around her, the world outside of Themyscira, as she, grew and evolved from that.
And to be clear, you're talking about the comics where that actually happened, not the Wonder Model movie where none of that happened.
And she somehow won World War II because there were no landmines in no man's land.
World War I, because apparently she sat out World War II and just let Hitler have his way.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, World War I, yeah.
Yeah, she just let Hitler run around and, terrorize the entire planet for a long time. To be fair, that's not quite as bad as Thor, who actively worked for Hitler to destroy Stalin in the comics. But yeah, like, let's be fair. For as much as Zack Snyder really tries to shoehorn in, like, really subpar, crappy political messages, like making the whole Batman v Superman thing parallel the American divide between the Republican and Democratic parties, but not really do it. Yeah, you can kind of tell that, like, there was this whole thing about, like, how Superman is in support of, people in Mexico and people who are victims of hurricanes, like, kind of like how Obama was standing with funding FEMA when Chris Christie and a bunch of other Republicans were trying to defund FEMA, and then the Hurricane Sandy happened to New Jersey. You can kind of see those parallels with Superman, and then you have Batman say that super bullshit Republican, like, if there's even a 1% possibility that
he's quoting Dick Cheney.
He's quoting Dick Cheney, like, directly. Like, if there's even a 1% possibility, we need to make sure, like, we need to treat it as an absolute certainty.
Made Batman a Republican?
They totally tried to make Batman a Republican, and then they tried to, like, re-quote that line in the Justice League movie when he's talking
to... Man, are you quoting lines?
Wait, what was that?
No, I noticed that too. Line a little bit in the last movie.
Yeah, like, they're really trying to, like, hammer home, like, this political divide, but they don't know enough about politics to actually talk about anything.
Yeah. Very surface level.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like watching American Horror Story Cult. It's just super surface level. Very like what I saw on CNN this last week kind of thing.
Yeah, and I will say that it is interesting looking at some of the reviews that have come out about this movie, because, like, after watching the movie, I was like, oh man, people are gonna, like, really rip into this one. Like, from most of, like, the mainstream people, they're like, oh yeah, the movie was okay, or, like, the movie was really good. And I'm just like, is this, like, another instance where, like, people are just, like, forgiving this crap? Like seriously, like,
especially this year, because right before Wonder Model came out, like a month before Wonder Model came out, we had Logan, which not only was clearly, I don't think this is even controversial to say, clearly the best superhero movie this year.
Yeah, it probably last whatever years.
Yeah, but also had a really feminist, unapologetically Hispanic character in the movie, because and what's really cool is Daphne Keane is the one who came up with the idea. She actually went into her audition and did her audition in Spanish, and then it's so awesome, because, like, that's a really gutsy move for a little kid to take for a big budget movie, and then they just rewrote the whole script around her audition, and it worked amazingly. So right before we had Wonder Model, which is like a regressive piece of crap, we had that movie, and people were fawning all over Wonder Model. And then a week before we got Justice League, we got Thor Ragnarok, which looked a lot better, had much more style to it, had a better political message about how we need to think critically about our rulers and not just, like, let them take over because we think it's their right, and how the people need to, like, make a stand, but was also really fun and funny, and also had a really progressive feminist character who also low-key was gay, and that was cool. Then you had the Justice League movie.
Well, let's not forget...
Why? We just had a much better movie.
Let's not forget
I don't understand
this. Spider-Man Homecoming also came out this year, and that was a really great superhero movie as well.
Well, no, but I'm saying, like, Spider-Man Homecoming didn't come out directly around the time of another DCEU movie. What I'm saying is like, we are having DCU movies right after much better other comic book adaptation movies. Like, directly after, and we can't even, like, compare them to what is currently in theaters with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this isn't a Marvel versus DC like, oh, I like one franchise better than another.
Logan is an MCU isn't MCU,
but
they're
like
Fox.
technically speaking, I am a DC fanboy. I like the DC comics better, and the movies are breaking my heart because like I'm watching the Marvel movies going like, oh, I'm actually kind of liking this, and then I'm watching the DC movies going, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh my god. Just as a giant fan of these characters and this world, just like, can you good movie? I'm begging you. I love DC. Stop trampling over these.
Yeah, I mean the best thing we have is the animated movies, and I do like the fact
they're not putting the time or money that they need to into those movies.
Yeah, especially recently, like the animation for The Killing Joke was a joke, and then
that's because. Okay, to be fair, I think Ghostbusters did the same thing. Like, the original Ghostbusters film had, like, 6 months between a finished script and actually being put in theaters. Where they did, like, pre-production, production, and post-production. This movie, like, the Killing Joke had 6 months between having a finished script and being in theaters. So to do it, they sent, they divided the movie into 5 parts and sent it to 5 different animation houses. So
yeah,
you had,
and if you had spent more time on the actual Killing Joke and not this bullshit Batgirl fucking Batman and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my god, it was a minute of the movie.
Yeah, but like here's the thing.
It was a minute of the movie.
Like I get no, but if you had spent less than a half an hour, if you had spent less than a half an hour on this whole like Batgirl like subplot and all this kind of stuff, then you could have spent more time actually animating the thing that everybody came for.
But it wouldn't have been long enough to put in theaters, even for the one day that it was in theaters.
Yeah, well, you could have expanded on the story about
they did.
The comedian.
They did, and it was cool.
You could have done more stuff.
But they did, and it was good. It was really good exposition that wasn't tripping over the toes of the original source material. Just so you know, Chanel, when we saw The Killing Joke, I think Ren gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and I think I gave it like 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, really, I've yet to see it, despite reading the comic years ago and loving it.
Yeah.
So I've kind of reading it for a while.
Well, I'm one of the very few people who actually does stand up for The Killing Joke, because given the restraints of the studio, I think they did the best they could with what they had. And I think that the idea of having a prologue starring Batgirl to make her less of a woman in the refrigerator like she was in the comic, developing her character more, and to the movie's credit, I love Batgirl in the movie. Like, they make her character work really well. Then the problem is when they try to integrate other parts of the Batman universe into her life. And then the way they really shoehorned in the Oracle thing at the end, when really that could have been a thing where, like, if you broke up the prologue into 2 parts and made it like a 5-act structure, so you had like a prologue with Batgirl being Batgirl at the beginning, and you had an epilogue with Batgirl being the Oracle at the end, instead of just a 30-second scene. Probably would have been better. But they didn't have time to work that out.
Yeah, because they rushed it. And same thing.
Why did they rush it though? Who did it get out after Batman versus? Well, no, it came out last year, right?
They were actually rushing it after the success of Deadpool.
Oh, okay.
Which is why it was rated R, even though there was kind of no reason to make it rated R.
And the fact that Flashpoint is like a more hardcore movie and it's PG-13.
Right. Well, also, both parts of Year One are more hardcore and they're PG-13 too.
Yeah, they just did R for
the sake of novelty, really. But then
I've seen that at movies. I watch them because I watched them growing up and stuff. But like, I've been avoiding so much of like the cartoons.
Oh, Batman and Harley was actually really good for the most part.
Yeah, I mean the animation, especially around Batman's mouth, were just kind of like but yeah, it was an enjoyable movie. It was just like the animation was like really shoddy at parts.
Yeah, and Melissa Roche was actually a really good Harley Quinn.
Yeah, she's got the voice down, definitely.
Yeah, but also Melissa Roche is really funny when they let her be.
Yeah, plus I like the fact that she brought her own style to it and didn't just try to imitate
the original Harley Quinn from the Batman animated series. Yeah. But it is really cool because, like, they do a really good job with Harley, but one of the things that I think is funny is they kind of make fun of the new Harley Quinn, where it's like, she's kind of like a teeny bopper, she's kind of like a Lolita nurse thing, or whatever the new fad is nowadays. But when she is, like, doing her own thing, she's the traditional Harley Quinn. And Poison Ivy's in the movie, and she's cool too.
Mm.
And Batman and Nightwing are actually pretty cool.
I need to check it out. I need to get all those damn movies. Maybe I can convince my mom to buy it for me for Christmas.
Yeah, the animated movies are really good for the most part. I mean, The Killing Joke has its weak points, but most of the animated movies are really fucking good.
I mean, I really like Under the Red Hood.
Oh god, yeah, I fucking love that one.
Under the Red Hood's great. I think The Dark Knight Returns is really great too. And that was cool because RoboCop did the voice of Batman.
Yeah.
In that one. Flashpoint is definitely one of my favorites. I really want to see Justice League Doom because I've heard a lot of good things about that one.
I want to see, I don't know if it's called Justice League War or if it's just called War, but I saw that movie in a store one time and that looked pretty good too.
Yeah, there's a store that has them for like super cheap, and I'm not going to say which one because I'm probably going to pick them up sometime. So,
oh my god, you can't give away your secret information.
No, I'm not.
I would do the same thing, man. Can't have anyone on my turf buying my stuff.
That's especially useless because, like, we all go to the same comic book store.
So, going back to Justice League, so, like, what are our final thoughts on this movie? Because, like, oh my god.
Garbage.
Fucking dumpster fire, man.
I'm probably going to be in the middle on here because, like, as awful as it was, it's sort of a guilty pleasure for me. I laughed more than I've laughed really at any movie this year.
I literally wrenched my neck laughing so hard, but I don't think a guilty pleasure movie has to, like, hold up. I don't think that it would be nearly as funny a second time watching it, whereas, like, The Room becomes more funny the more you watch it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, some of the dialogue in this movie is just like, and some of the action and all that kind of stuff. But like, one thing that we didn't even get on in our entire review was Superman's lips. Good God,
I mentioned it.
Okay.
At some point, I said something about it.
It was like the annoying orange. If anybody knows those videos, like, it just looks so incredibly awkward. It was hilarious.
That point where he was... Okay, at first I thought his only appearance would be in that cell phone footage at the beginning, simply because I thought that was supposed to be, like, the bad quality of the cell phone image was supposed to mask how crappy the CGI was, and it didn't at all, but I thought that was the point. But then you see him, like, up close in HD, and that scene where he's with Lois Lane out in the woods, and he's like, "Yes, ma'am," and he smiles, and it's like,
oh, that smile.
It's so awful, like it's so creepy. You could probably put the Psycho theme right behind it, and it would be a little bit more fitting. You could just, behind Henry Cavill, just...
Also, that being said, can we get rid of Henry Cavill at least?
Can we please get rid of Lois Lane? Like, Lois Lane in these movies where she's like, "Superman, you're gonna be so disappointed in me. While you were gone, I gave up all of my integrity as a journalist that I didn't have before anyway, and I sat around doing nothing, which is exactly what I did before you left anyway."
Yeah, and...
Oh my god, she's so ridiculously incapable of anything.
And
it's so sad.
And what's even worse than that is the fact that, like, Amy Adams is a great actress.
Oh, it's not Amy Adams' fault. I mean, I don't know who told her specifically to throw the kryptonite spear into the giant puddle like that. I'm assuming Zack Snyder literally told her, be as helpless as possible at all times. And she acted with that direction in mind. God. Oh, Lois Lane makes me want to cry. I'm laughing to hide my tears.
And see, the thing is especially lately in the comic books, Lois Lane is a badass.
Not lately in the comic books. Lois Lane has been a badass for a while. Not in, like, the Christopher Reeves movies. Like, she's kind of an April O'Neil in those movies. But, like, even in the Superman animated series, they tried to make her more badass.
Yeah, I loved her in the animated series. In fact, I love the animated series of Superman. Yeah. It's the best Lex Luthor we ever got, and like, oh my god. So we watched this whole movie, and we're thinking to ourselves, thank God Lex Luthor wasn't in this movie. And then, after all the credits are done, he shows up again, and it's like, why? And then he's like, maybe we should form a league of our own.
And once again, I was, like, taken into South Park. If, like, when Butters is like, see, no matter what timeline you're on, no matter what you do, your dad will have always fucked your mom. Maybe we need to create a franchise of our own for the supervillains. Except for even, like, the simulation of cardboard cutout children pretending to be superheroes was more believable than actual adults in a movie that's supposed to be taken seriously.
All those bad feelings start rushing back as soon as I saw Jesse. And I like him. Jesus Christ.
I like him too. I actually don't like him at all, but I still defend him so badly in the DCEU because he auditioned to be the Riddler. And he does a great performance as the Riddler. And I swear to you, they told him, we're not going to have you do the Riddler. We're going to have you be Lex Luthor. But do the Riddler thing. And Jesse Eisenberg's like, but they're two totally different characters. And Zack Snyder's like, no. We love your audition. Just do that.
Well, and I also get that they're trying to go for, like, the young entrepreneur, like, internet mogul.
So they literally got the guy from the Facebook movie to be in it.
Yeah, they're totally going for a Mark Zuckerberg thing. And you could make that work. I'm a little skeptical about Lex Luthor, but, like, you know, like, there is a universe where that could work. But, quite frankly, I will say that I have yet to see a live-action Lex Luthor that I liked. Now, concur. To be fair, to
well, you didn't
people
see
listening,
Smallville.
No, I didn't see Smallville, and I don't really remember Lex Luthor in the New Adventures of Lois and Clark,
which should tell you a lot.
I liked it when I was little, but when I was little, I liked everything. So if that's a good gauge of the quality of Lois and Clark, I mean, I will say that Dean Cain physically looks great as Superman.
Oh yeah, he totally did.
Like he nails the look better than a lot of people. I will also say that Terry Hatcher. The only time we ever saw Lois Lane, who has black hair in the comics, actually have black hair in a live-action form. Every single movie is like Lois Lane is a brunette.
Or a redhead.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Spider-Man movies too, where it's like you can never get a natural redhead to play Mary Jane, which always cracks me up. You get somebody with blonde hair to play a redhead, and then you actually get Emma Stone, the redhead, in everything that she's in, to play Gwen Stacy, the blonde.
I will say, just to sort of wrap up on Justice League, there's a problem in your movie when the most realistic element is that an American teenage boy is into a Korean all-girl group. Because, like, in between the Rick and Morty cameo that's completely played out of sequence, there's the background noise of Blackpink, and I looked up the song, and it's oh crap, I don't remember the song. It's called like I know a lot of K-pop bands, but Blackpink isn't someone I've really kept up with, but I think it's called like as long as it lasts or something like that. But in any case, Ezra Miller apparently is the reason why that little cameo popped up in the movie, is because he was a big fan of that particular song. And he apparently, like, brought it on set one day, and everyone was like, that's cool, we'll put it in the movie. And somehow that was the most realistic point of the whole film.
Alright, so the actual song that it's from is As If It's Your Last.
As If It's Your Last, that's it. Yeah.
So...
it was literally more realistic than anything Gal Gadot wore in the whole movie. I swear, I swear she's, like, more ridiculous looking in this movie than Queen Amidala is in the whole Star Wars prequels. Because, like, I swear to God, because at least in those movies, like, there's some creativity involved with the costume design, and it fits the world, and she's, like, a queen, and it makes sense. But in this movie, literally every time she wore a new outfit, I would just look at her, I was just like, what the fuck is that? The fuck is that? Yeah, it's like,
What the fuck?
yeah, it's just like, you're like, oh, what does she do? She's like a art museum curator. Why the fuck is she wearing, like, an all-white, half-corseted skirt suit? Like, what the fuck is that? And then she has, like, that one top that has, like, a lower cut, like, in the front, it comes, like, down all the way past her boobs, but then in the back, it's, like, all the way almost down the entire shirt, and I'm like, why are you even wearing clothes right now, really? Like, how is that shirt staying on your body? That must be a lot of double-sided tape. And then at the end of the movie, she's wearing, like, that top that has that bizarre fucking half capelet thing attached to her, like, tucked-in, weird-ass, like, high-waisted, belted designer top that's just like, the fuck are you wearing, woman?
I also gotta say, another interesting, realistic aspect of the movie was Ezra Miller's running.
He does more swimming than Aquaman, because if you just watch his arms, he's doing like when you take swimming classes when you're in elementary school, they teach you how to, like, cup your hand into the water, and he's, like, cupping the air while he's, like, bizarrely flailing his arms like Rubber Man.
I will say the unfortunate thing is we have seen Quicksilver in 2 different iterations before we've ever seen the Flash in movie form.
And they both looked so much better. And to be fair, Evan Peters' Quicksilver is kind of comical looking too, where it's just kind of like zoom, flash motion up front, and like right in front of his face. Like, it's kind of like having one of those stop-mo cams attached to your shoulders, like looking directly in your face while you're in a wind tunnel, like while you're doing that indoor skydiving. It looks kind of like that, but somehow that was more believable and realistic to me than the Flash's bizarre Elastic Man arms just like waving around like limp noodles everywhere.
I will say I love that the one moment in the movie that I genuinely liked was the scene where he was running and Superman was like fighting off the other guys, and then you see Superman's eyes slowly start to turn, and then the look on Ezra Miller's face was priceless. I want a screen grab of that.
He seriously looks like how I picture Greg Sestero to look. If you read The Disaster Artist, or if you listen to it on audiobook, he talks about how when they're filming The Room and they're in the flower shop, everyone thought that the dog was like a porcelain dog because he didn't move all day. And then on like their 20th take, at the end of the take, Tommy Wiseau pats the dog on the head and says, "Hi, doggy," as like a little improv line, because he just realized that the dog was actually there after filming in like that space all morning. I swear, like, that must be what Greg Sestero's face looked like when he realized that that dog was there the whole time. Just like, what? Ezra Miller is too good for this.
He really got me. Oh god.
He better be making that Gal Gadot money, man. Or better yet, he better be making that Amy Adams money, man. A little known fact, in Man of Steel, Amy Adams actually made significantly more money than Henry Cavill did.
Really?
Yeah, they paid her like $66 million, I think. I mean, that's off the top of my head. That might not be accurate, but I know that they paid her like a lot more because she was the big name at the time, and Henry Cavill was kind of a nobody. And they mostly hired him because like he really looked like Superman, so they didn't pay him nearly as much as they paid her.
I will say I do find it amusing that, so I was just looking at the box office mojo for this weekend for Justice League, and in the United States, it made $96 million its opening weekend, which for a superhero movie, for an ensemble superhero movie, that's pretty abysmal.
Well, especially like one with marketing and advertisements for literally over a year.
And interestingly enough, if you go onto Box Office Mojo, there is no description of what their production budget is.
Yeah, I was just about to say, how much did it cost to make the damn film?
Yeah, I don't know. And
well, I know that so far they haven't even made a third of the money that they paid Gal Gadot for the movie, so...
Oof.
Yeah, because how much did they pay Gal Gadot for this movie?
I can't remember if they paid her $300,000. I think it was $300,000 a movie.
Yeah. So, Wonder Woman, its opening weekend, made $103 million, which, you know, you would think that the goal is for the ensemble film to make more.
And especially post Wonder Woman, when everyone's all freaked out over Wonder Woman for like 5 months straight.
Right, and in total it made $412 million. Yeah, Suicide Squad, its opening weekend made $133 million. Batman v Superman made $166 million, but that's back before, you know, most people knew that like this was a shitty franchise. You know, because you only had one movie that, you know,
not
like,
a lot of people saw.
Right. But like I think the only reason why these movies are making money is because, you know, you have the fanboys that are going to go regardless. You have the people who watch pretty much any superhero movie, and then you have like the families and all that kind of stuff. Oh, well, what's something we can agree on and all that kind of stuff. But like I think the reason why these movies are successful truly is because they're banking off of brand recognition.
Yeah.
Mostly. Which is sad, because like these movies should be holding up as films themselves, but you know, especially when you get into the DC movies, you get a lot of people defending these movies going like, oh, you got to read this comic and you got to read this comic,
It's
and
like,
you know, it's
I did. That's why I don't like this.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get the argument that it is bound to happen. You know, oh no, you guys, you got to watch the extended edition. That's a good movie. The argument,
and people are petitioning for this movie to have a Zack Snyder extended cut.
Yeah, so
why?
Just to address this a little bit, because some people listening might not know. So there was an unfortunate tragedy with the Snyder family. Zack and Deborah Snyder had a daughter that committed suicide, and yes, that's really unfortunate. And yes, we've been taking pot shots at Zack Snyder for pretty much the entirety of this, but I do want to address that, you know, they did go through a tragedy. He did have to back out. It was mostly...
She did too.
Yes. So it was mostly because of that. There's also signs that he won't return because of this this incident. We don't know. I do want to keep the art separate from the artists, especially in this circumstance. And, you know, they did bring Joss Whedon to come in for reshoots to liven it up, to make it funnier, and
clearly to make it more Marvel.
Yeah.
And they did succeed, just not the way they meant to.
And from my understanding, about 20% of the movie is Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon's like contributions. So
Joss Whedon makes me so sad.
It's possible that some of that stuff was The Flash.
Joss Whedon makes me so sad because I really liked a lot of his work for a long time, and then he came out with Dollhouse, and I was just like, okay, so that was a weak point. But like, he was making really great TV and then a handful of like decent movies, but he was also writing comics, so I was like, oh, he's doing the Avengers movie. You know, a comic book writer who is a director should be put to direct a comic book movie. That makes sense. And, you know, the Avengers was okay. And Age of Ultron was fucking terrible. And Justice League is even worse. And now they're just like, you take the franchise. No. When I said I didn't want Zack Snyder to make any more DCEU movies, I didn't mean like that. I definitely didn't mean under those circumstances, but I also definitely didn't mean leave it with Joss Whedon.
So, we will see where this franchise goes. It'll be interesting to find out and to sort of cement whether or not the Matt Reeves is going to have anything to do with the DCEU. Now, you know, to my knowledge, it's not going to. It's also been rumored that Ben Affleck is bowing out as Batman. Mm-hmm. And partly because of, you know, the whole controversy and the Weinstein effect and stuff like that.
Well, there was also a lot leading up to that, too, of just him not being able to handle the project.
Yeah, plus, I mean, to be fair to Ben Affleck, he is a much better director than he is an actor. And I can say that with absolute confidence. You know, I've liked The Town. You know, I thought Gone Baby Gone was a terrific film. Argo was great.
Argo had its problems.
Argo had its problems, but it's mostly in, like, you know, the factual side. I'm not talking about, like, the direction of the movie. Yeah, it's fucked up that Ben Affleck replaced a Latino. Yeah, that's really messed up. He whitewashed himself into the movie. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, there aren't issues with it, but I'm saying that, like, the way that it's structured and the way that it was directed was good. He needs to go back to directing. There was some promise, I thought, with Batman v Superman, but
they squished all that into the ground.
Yeah, after watching Justice League, I really don't have much confidence in him or really anybody outside of Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa. Because, let's face it, Aquaman has been joked about for decades of being the lamest superhero in comic books.
And then this movie kind of proved all of that right. It's like, oh, he doesn't talk to fish, you guys. He doesn't talk to the fish. They didn't
clarify whether or not he talked to fish.
No. They did. He doesn't talk to fish, you guys. He talks to the water. And then the water talks to the fish.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
How is that better? That's worse. It's seriously like, I saw this thing that was like, the whole problem with the DCEU can be like boiled down to the design of Aquaman's trident. How in the movie, his trident, that by definition has 3 prongs, now also has 2 smaller prongs on the side that don't make it any more dangerous or intimidating, just factually not what it's supposed to be.
Oh, I saw something online that was like, stop bitching, you guys, it's not the trident in the movie. Like, they actually said that.
Did they?
Like, yeah, on some like online things. They never called it the trident in the movie.
They didn't call it the trident, but it's
They just called it a pitchfork.
But it's still pointless to have the 2 tinier prongs on the side.
Yeah, I would agree.
But, like, okay, so they updated the costume a little bit, so there's, you know, more Aquaman dork hanging out, but they have him do, like, this torpedo thing that just looks silly, like, where he jumps up in the water and lands backwards and then just swoom. It's just goofy.
Do you think Disney...
And there was no topo! There was no topo, you guys!
Do you think Disney threatened Warner Brothers and said, you better not have that trident, we're gonna have it in our live action adaptation of Little Mermaid, so you gotta change the design?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't put it past them, but I don't think so. That's really a stretch. I know that they did bully what's his name? They did bully Andy Serkis into pushing back his Jungle Book movie a full year, even though he started production a long time before Disney did.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate too, because like the Jungle Book idea that he has is like really good, and like from all the comments that I read, like after the Jungle Book, like after hearing the news that Andy Serkis was doing his own, people were like, "Why? We already got one," you know, and all this kind of stuff.
Well, technically, we already got 3 or 4.
Yeah, technically we already got 3 or 4, and plus Disney just piggybacked off their idea and, you know, just made an adaptation of their own movie.
Yeah,
there's more to the Jungle Book than, you know, the Disney adaptation that came out in the 60s.
Yeah, it's like The Thief and the Cobbler all over again, where they worked on The Thief and the Cobbler for a really long time, but then Disney heard about it and they made their own version of it, which was Aladdin. So then Miramax kicked the director of The Thief and the Cobbler off the project and then rushed to get it out, but they made it really crappy and nobody saw it because they were like, but it's just a shitty version of Aladdin.
Yeah, and that version is a shitty version of Aladdin, but you gotta watch the re-cobbled cut.
Yeah.
To like get the good version, and I strongly recommend.
You don't get to recommend it.
Okay.
I get to recommend it.
Because you recommended it to the Nostalgia Critic, and he actually came back
did cover it. Yeah, he did actually cover it at one point. But I also recommended it to you. So
yeah.
So there. It is like a masterpiece of animation from like that goes straight to the top of best animated works in cinema.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, it does. All right, so yeah, we went on for a while about Justice League, and there's a lot,
and a lot of other things.
Yeah, and a lot of other things, and there's a lot to get into. So if any listeners out there want to add their input, we can possibly talk about that at a later date. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being on, Chanel.
No, thank you. This is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. We'd probably like to have you on again if we ever like watch the same movie at a certain point.
Yeah, and hopefully figure out
maybe in person.
Yeah, maybe do that.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Once again, we will try to mediate the issues with our audio to make sure that our podcast is much more listenable than the one that you just listened to. We do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/allwalksofilm. If you want to support us that way, we can possibly get better audio equipment. Now, I get that it's on our side, but it's always good to have good equipment. Right now, I just have Blue Yeti. I don't really have any of the super gadgets or anything like that. And quite frankly, I don't really feel that it's needed on this podcast. But for other costs, such as paying for the Adobe Creative Suite, and not to mention the countless hours that I've spent on this podcast, it would be nice to have a couple people donate $1 here and there so that we could get a Podbean account restored. There weren't enough people listening to it to make it feasible. So if that's of interest to you, maybe $1 a month, or if you can figure out a different way of payment, thank you so much for your continued support.